Welcome to the Health and Wealth Podcast. This is a show dedicated to the pursuit of health and wealth without losing your health to attain that wealth. With this podcast, we're going to share stories and best practices of successful business owners who either sell health or have health as part of their business plan. You're going to get great marketing and strategic advice from proven, successful experts. We will also be sharing stories from successful entrepreneurs who lost their health on the road to wealth, what they learned, and how they do things differently now, both in business and in life. Let's welcome your host, businesswoman, personal trainer, and podcast queen, JJ Flazanes.
Welcome, everyone, to today's show. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host and producer. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about the 80 by 80 movement with Karen Briscoe. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today applies to all businesses, even though Karen comes from a real estate background. But I found that a lot of the practices that she has used and the ones she applies on a daily basis are the same kinds of applications that you can use no matter what your business is or what your focus is. For those of you new to the community, I just want to remind you that we are doing a 30-day manifestation challenge. It is free in September of 2020, starting September 1st. And you have to register by the middle of August in order to get into the group and participate with us. So if you're interested in joining the 30-day free manifestation challenge, go to jjflazanes.com/30day, 30day. Again, that's jjflazanes.com/30day, and you can find the link also in the show notes. Karen Briscoe launched the 80 by 80 movement, Milestones and Medals, Challenges for Life at 59 years old to encourage activity at any age. Anyone can create their own personal challenges for life to achieve 80 movement milestones by age 80. The 80 by 80 movement website provides an easy-to-use format to track progress on the journey. She founded the 80 by 80 movement with the idea that she was not alone, that there are a lot of people out there, her age and older, and even younger, who disqualify themselves from activities because they feel they're too old, too unfit, too unhealthy, non-athletes, or it's just not me. And she thinks it's time to change that conversation. 80 by 80 is about embracing every challenge for life, every milestone, every moment, and just doing it, and knowing above all else, it's your journey. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Well, I'm so delighted to be here, JJ, because health and wealth, I think, is something that encompasses living a full life.
Absolutely. And I'm finally ready to be embarking on that journey fully. And I appreciate you coming onto the show today because you have a background with a lot of wealth in it and a lot of success. And before we get into today's topic about health and wealth and how you're sort of linking those together now, I'd like to give everybody a little bit more of a background on what you've been doing up until this point, since some of the things in your bio really just talked about the 80 by 80 movement. So why don't you give us a little brief synopsis of how you've built your own business up until this point, and then we can go to what inspired you to pivot.
So I am a professional real estate agent, what many people know as a mega agent, which means that I have a team, I have a business partner and staff, and I am in a top brokerage and represent in the top 100% of that brokerage. So, have achieved what many people would, as you said, call wealth and success, and have done it at a high level for quite some time. Well, even through the market crash, the recession, and built it back up again. And what happened in that process is many people were like, well, how did you do it? Right? Because whenever someone is successful, that's oftentimes people are like, success leaves clues, as Tony Robbins says. So as I was rebuilding the business and meeting with success, I would coach people, I would do trainings, and found that I have this message or this voice of what I call sticky stories, where infusing information and how-tos with these inspirational, insightful stories that made them memorable. And in 2009, started a blog, and that found a voice and had many people say, you should write a book. And in 2015, I was doing some coaching with a life coach. I'd done a lot of productivity coaching and business coaching, again, really heavily on that wealth side of the equation. And I was at a retreat with several other women. We were all doing a deep dive into what we said we wanted to do, what our biggest why. And I said I wanted to write a book. And on the last day, at a last session, we were to share what was stopping us from doing what we said we wanted to do. And I had this epiphany. I had this light bulb go off. I was like, well, the only person stopping me is me. That was very empowering too, because in some ways it feels very limiting. At the same time, it was extremely empowering because I realized I could change me. Now, I still had the time quandary, as many people who are very busy never seem to have enough time to do the things they say they want to do. I started about really realizing how habits are formed in terms of writing, and came across the book by Gretchen Rubin, The Happiness Project, on what makes people happy, and certain things they said they would do and make them happy. And she's like, well, then why don't you do it? And she found that most of what was stopping people was habits. And so she wrote another book that was habit-based, and that was called Better Than Before. So your habit will help you be better than before. And I stumbled upon a habit of the daylight savings time hack, where in the fall of the year, you fall back, you quote unquote gain an hour. You could actually do this time hack at any time, but it's easier to do it then because your body clock's already set. So I was like, okay, I can change me. I'm going to change how I get up in the morning. And so I did. And I'm a self-professed not morning person, but I changed and developed a morning habit. And that then led to what I call the creative endeavors, which is writing a book, being a guest on podcasts, and then launching my own podcast. And so that's actually how you and I met, JJ, is through Doug with Turnkey Production. He and Strick, the Turnkey folks, do the podcast production for the 5-Minute Success.
And I want to talk about the 5-Minute Success. So it was a book first before it was a podcast?
Yes, it was a book first. The idea, again, came out of writing this blog that I had this voice, and I did a compilation book of 365 stories with the idea that you would have one every day would be some sort of action point, a message and an action point. And many real estate agents, entrepreneurs, salespeople, they tend to have this shiny object squirrel phenomenon where, every day they want to do something different. So I felt like I was going to be feeding into that need of every day being different. And it has turned out to be very powerful for many reasons beyond just that initial reason. And being an author in a book as an authority, I started being asked to be a guest on podcasts, other people's podcasts. And I made the correlation pretty quickly. Being a guest on podcasts led to book sales. Oh, if I have a podcast, I could have conversations with amazing guests.
So what kinds of things are you talking about on your podcast, The 5-Minute Success?
So the concepts of 5-Minute Success follow what's in the book, which is Real Estate Success in 5 Minutes a Day. What I found is in these conversations I've had with now well over 250 guests, is that they really are universal principles. The first one is commit to get leads. So that's business development, prospecting, lead generation. And, in wealth building, really everybody does something. Even nonprofits do lead generation. And even dentists and attorneys, everybody's some sort of customer attraction, either attraction marketing, or actual old-fashioned prospecting, lead generation. Then the next component is what I refer to as consult to sell. So there's some sort of conversion process. So this lead goes through some sort of process. And in the real estate world, that would be buying or selling a house that has a transaction at the other end. There's something that occurs. And then the next component is connect to build and grow. What often happens in business, sales, really a lot of endeavors is people become just very transactional, they're only as good as your next deal. And so what happens with that is that it's not sustainable. So connect to build and grow builds the sustainability of it, the scale, the leverage, the systems. So you have an ongoing successful enterprise. And then the next component, which actually is an encompassing component because it surrounds the whole principles, and that is success, thinking, activities, and vision. And a lot of mindset and motivation. They'll talk about vision and vision boarding, and then they'll have affirmations and the thinking component. There's the action in between, right? So you visualize it, you think about how to do it, you affirm how you're going to do it, and then you actually do it. So that surrounds it all. So the book has that format, and the podcast has that format.
Yeah, it sounds like the book is for anyone, and anybody could benefit from the focus that you provide for really any business. Would you agree?
Yes, and stories are predominantly going to be real estate and sales oriented. What I find sometimes, though, it's easier almost to see the application in another profession, field, or industry, because many times people will say, oh, that works that way in my profession as well. And so again, many people are also interested in real estate and how it works, because most people live somewhere, and well, everybody lives somewhere. And so they're fascinated with the process. So even if you're not in the actual industry of real estate, I find many people find that the 5-minute success principles to be valuable to know.
So let's talk about your journey on this wealth building process and writing the book and doing the podcast. And would you say, because it sounds like you have a pretty good balance happening right now. Was it always that way?
I am definitely a German workaholic and, we have Depression era parents. So I have that ingrained in me, and I'm in an industry that really is 24/7. The real estate profession time is of the essence. And so part of, I think, the reason why I'm attracted to it, and a lot of people are, in addition to serving and providing value, is the fact that every day is so different. So even with routines, it's this not knowing when your next deal is going to come from, or where your next buyer or lead will come from. It usually happens, Friday at 5:00, right? Or the offers being negotiated Saturday at 9:00. So because of that, there is a high level of overachievement on the wealth side. And I found that I was thankfully and successfully achieving at a high level, but there was still a lot missing. Even though I felt I was living a full life, I'm healthy, my husband's healthy, I have 2 successful adult healthy children. And yet I was looking around going, okay, so this is it. And you may recall from your psych days of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and this pyramid. And the pyramid has a base of the physiological needs, and then, which is becoming very evident in, when people don't have those needs met, like if you can't get to toilet paper, then you really care a lot about it, right? And that's what Maslow said. And then the next one is more safety and security needs. And a lot of people are feeling insecure with a lot of uncertainty. And then there's the more relationship needs and esteem needs, success, achievement needs. But the top is the self-actualization. And I had this kind of wake-up call, epiphany, like, well, what if you get to the top of the pyramid and you run out of time? And the idea of having meaning in your work and in your life, a lot of people, I'll do that when I'm retired, or I'll do that when the kids are out of school, or I'll do that when whatever. It's a lot of, I'll do that when, or if this happens, then I'll do that, instead of finding ways to infuse it into your life and having a full life, a whole life, instead of one or the other. And what I found was, or the epiphany that I had, is to flip the pyramid and start with self-actualization. Because by doing that, then I found for myself and many other people, everything becomes more meaningful and better. And in this example of putting self-actualization first, or zone of genius, Joseph Campbell in the Hero's Journey and Heroine's Journey talks about it as being your call to adventure, or your call to creativity, or your call to there's lots of ways you can be called. To go out on that calling first, because then you'll have true self-esteem, because you will be doing what is your purpose in life. And then you'll have, in my view, better relationships, because you will live in your authentic self instead of what somebody else expects of you. And even on the what people would consider the basic needs of providing for your family and where you're going to live and your security needs and your physical needs, if you're living true to yourself, you're probably going to be your most productive, valuable self on that capacity as well. At least that's what I found, because when I started putting self-actualization first, my call to creativity, my call to contribution first, I actually became better at everything I was already doing because I was doing it with a new, renewed purpose.
Well, what led you to realize that something was missing? Was it something physical, something emotional? I know you said you sort of looked at the pyramid and thought, check, 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 now what? But was there anything gnawing at you or something that just really brought that to the forefront?
It wasn't any one particular event. I do think that it was my time had come, if you will, maybe as an example. With the 5-minute success, I'd kind of become an expert on time. And people often were like, work-life balance, how do you do that? And, thinking of time as this commodity, whereas Lazu said time is a created thing. To say I don't have time is like saying I don't want to. So I was just frequently bringing up in my own life and in conversations, well, what does time really mean? Because it's truly relative. I mean, Einstein said that, right? 1 minute on a hot stove or in traffic or in a boring meeting is just going to feel like forever because you don't want to do it. But 1 hour with somebody you love or doing the things you love, time will fly by. So time is relative. And so it really is up to us, myself included, to give it meaning. And I say fascinating, and just like the unbelievable aspect of this is with, COVID-19 is that I think everybody's going through this now. This is really becoming a worldwide question, so what is time and how long is this going to take and what is meaningful in life and evaluating all of this. And so I think that it's amazing to me, and I feel very blessed and honored and humbled that I was given this epiphany when I did, because I feel like there's a message to others that they too, this could be a choice. When you think about other people that have been on heroine's journeys, the best example is Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. So Dorothy had both an external and an internal. So internally, Dorothy was not happy with Kansas. She really, living with her aunt and uncle on the farm was not really what she wanted in life. So she had this internal unrest, but she also had an external event, this twister that picked her up from Kansas and dumped her in the land of Oz. And that is often what happens with people, myself included. I didn't have a true external event. I've had events, but I don't have like one I could pinpoint. But I had a lot of internal, like, I'm still not sure if this is what I'm supposed to be doing kind of thing. And so the thing that Dorothy learned, and I have learned, and I think others that go on this hero's journey, is that I had it inside me all along. And it was for me to discover. And even Glinda the Good Witch said to Dorothy, Dorothy's like, why didn't you tell me this? If I had it in me all along, why didn't you tell me? She said, well, you had to discover it on your own. And so I think that's frequently the case, JJ, with people is it may be, they can maybe tie it to one event, but they also may recognize that there was internal going on as well.
So I have a couple questions that are a little personal, and you don't have to answer them if you don't want to. Number one, do you know your astrology? Do you know your sun sign?
I believe I'm a Taurus, but I haven't spent a lot of time studying astrology other than there's bull.
There's some fire in there too somewhere. I don't know if it's in your moon or your rising, but there's fire besides that Taurus, because definitely makes sense for wealth building Taurus. That's so much in alignment, but your sort of unending, and workaholism is too, but what isn't, that makes me think that there's some fire, is the really consciousness and awareness of the stages of check, check, check. Oh, is there more? Why don't we flip this? Like that, for a lot of earth signs, needs to be a bigger event, actually, because of the stubbornness, because of the sort of unwillingness to change. And so I feel like there's something else of higher consciousness within your chart that kept you aware and looking around and, like you just said, appreciative of when it happened for you, so that way you could continue enriching your life in the ways that you have. And I know that your next project sort of came out of that. Would I be correct in saying
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're going to talk about the 80 by 80?
Yeah. But before we do
Okay.
that, because I heard a lot of all kinds of fun mindset kind of things, and a little bit of law of attraction there with the vision boards and the hero's journey and the mental processing. Just for the people that are listening, whether they're in a health business or in real estate, or they don't have a business and they're looking at their lives and wanting to do things differently. If there was one thing that did make a major shift, and it sounded like it might have been the time issue, or it might have been the habit issue that you talked about earlier, and you can just tell me if that was it. But if it was there, what was like the defining moment of something that you did differently that, again, changed the trajectory of either how you did business or how you looked at life or how you moved forward in a different way? And it doesn't have to be necessarily physical or even financial. It could literally be emotional or mental.
Yes, actually, that was a 3-part epiphany, and you nailed one of them well. So the first one was I realized that the only one stopping was me, and I could change me. The second one was that time is a relative thing. And so if I say I don't have time, it's mean I don't want to. So I needed to personally set up the habit to do it, so that I no longer use time as this cop out, if you will. And then the third one was this urgency that came out of reading another book called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. So she also wrote the book Eat, Pray, Love, which people may be more familiar with. But Big Magic is about this idea, and you spoke about it with the law of attraction, but it's the idea that there's this in the universe, there's ideas that are available, and they'll come to people. And I know you've had this happen, JJ, and I've had it happen. I remember, like, for example, when my son was young, he was highly allergic to mosquito bites. And I'm like, why don't they come up with a net that could go over the stroller so that, we could, and then about 2 months later, somebody did, and it wasn't me. And so I've had this experience enough to know that if an idea doesn't come to me, and that's what it says in the book, and its time has come, it will go to somebody else. And so I had this epiphany when I was reading that book. I was actually on an airplane to Dallas, that this is my message. This is mine to share, mine to experience, and to contribute to the world. And this idea of time and habit has become, if you would say, the one thing, if you will, because really I can first tie it all back to that, but I can also project forward into it, because when change happens to me, or I want change to make it happen, the most effective way for me is to set a habit, an intention, and time block or activity block. Different people use different references. I use activity block. I set the activity in a block to do it, so then it becomes part of my life. And rather than life happening at me or to me, I am designing and creating the life that I love. As I live the life that I love, but I also want to create the life of my dreams.
Excellent. Now, all of this, everything going well, self-realization, I'm flipping the pyramid, and what led you to creating the 80 by 80 movement?
So part of health and wealth, I'm sure you've heard the saying, people that, have health until you don't have it, it is the most important thing. Or once you've lost it, you realize how important it is. My son and some of his friends were getting ready to do a triathlon, and at the time I was 59, talked me into doing it. And I had at that age had never competed in any athletic event before in my life. Now, considering myself an active person, my husband and I bike a great deal, leisurely, and we've gone as far as I think 60 miles. So we've done some bike trips around the world and things. And I like to hike. And I know how to swim, but that was from my youth when I was a child. But I was like, sure, I could do it if you all will be there to encourage me. Well, there was a weather event the weekend of the scheduled triathlon, and so it got canceled. And I just was like, okay, I could leave that there. It wasn't meant to be, or I could go schedule for the next triathlon, which I did. So I did a sprint triathlon. It was my first ever event, and I had a lot of rookie things that I did that now I know how to do better. But the crazy thing is that the weather was iffy about whether to wear a wetsuit. And so I'd gone down to the water to check it because my husband's like, oh, just check the water. And I was talking to this guy. He said, I was like, yeah, I'm just checking the water. He said, well, why would you wear a wetsuit? And I said, well, because I've never done this before. And, I hear that sometimes it's good to wear a wetsuit. And he says, well, if you don't need the wetsuit, then why would you automatically disqualify yourself from the event? I was like, well, I'm not going to win. I've never competed before in my life. So what does it matter? And he goes, you don't know that. If you don't, you'll never know. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. So I didn't wear the wetsuit. And I finished the triathlon with some rookie mistakes, but I finished it and checked the results later. And it turned out I placed the fastest for my age group. Well, I was 59, so in the novice category. So that led to several people saying, well, you're going to do this again? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be that person who does it. I'm going to do 80 by the time I turn 80. So then that picked up some momentum. And that led to the idea of the 80 by 80 movement to compete or complete milestones. So competing is medals. Those are the obvious things that you go to a 5K or a triathlon or any event that's going to have a medal associated with it. But I also wanted to be milestones because you can track those. There's sites that track your medals. But the idea of 80 by 80 is movement for life, right? So, and to set up challenges for life. And so the idea is milestones could also be included. Like, for example, I hike Machu Picchu with my son. So whenever I do something that is a milestone for me, I want to be able to acknowledge that too. So what came out of all of this was this enthusiasm to create this movement, this 80 by 80 movement. And there's a website you can go to, and anybody can, and it's free and available to anybody, to register your events, your medals or your milestones. And you can keep track, because the other thing I found in this journey is that if you have something to look forward to, and there's a lot of events that are being canceled. So you can set up your own milestone of challenges for life and then meet them. And this will give you something to look forward to and something to keep you and all of us healthy and living a fuller, more active life.
So the goal of 80 by 80 was really just to connect people on keeping their goals, keeping their movement, keeping their milestone, getting those, achieving those, and kind of feeling like a part of a bigger community.
Yes, it's a community. It has Facebook as well. So you can share on Facebook, and we have opportunity to share photos and videos. And then the website is a way to track. Again, it's your challenge. So you decide what is a challenge for you. And once you've met that challenge, you can register your challenge. And the idea is to complete 80 by the time you turn 80. Well, so if you're 60 like me, that means I have 20 years, and you can do the math. That's 4 years. So that's very doable. If you're younger, obviously you've got longer, but you could also set it up for different levels of challenges. Like I've known people that say, I'm going to do, only count, these kind of events, and I'm going to track that, how many of those I do, and work towards my 80 goal. So there's lots of different ways to track. And the idea is to create challenges so that you'll have something to keep you the momentum in the movement.
So what's next for the 80 by 80 movement? I know that you're doing like a special section on your podcast about it.
Yes. So we have special guests that are coming to share. The first guest, very amazing woman, Lynn Salvo, who's in her 70s. She's already earned 2 Guinness Book of World Records, biking, one across the United States and one across Canada. In 2020, she was scheduled to bike across Europe. I'm not sure whether that's still going to take place, but she is a woman that's just very inspiring, and she's showing how age is can you could still achieve amazing things at really any age.
Great. And so that's now on the podcast. How does it structured? Is it once a week? Is it once a month? Does it have its own name?
So the 5-Minute Success Podcast has 2 episodes a week, which are the 5-Minute Success Principle based podcasts. Then there's actually a Flip Time Love Life episode where someone talks about their heroes or heroines journey, and that is once a month on the first Friday of the month. And then the 80 by 80 movement are once a quarter. So there's a couple of episodes to kind of get the process jump started at the beginning of 2020, and then it's going to go to a once a quarter.
Okay. And then what's next? I mean, you're having it on the podcast. Are there any, what's your outreach like? Are you looking for people to join in? How are you, what are your goals for the 80 by 80?
Yes, it's to build a community and for people to inspire others on their ideas of what, an 80 by 80 looks like, because this is, again, if it's your own challenge for life, then we want to be inspired by your goals. I know this one guy who does pole vaulting. And so I'm just like, I want to expand what it means to do movement challenges for life. And in the 5-Minute Success space, there is the other, there's one book out, the Commit to Get Leads 66-Day Challenge, which comes out of the 5-Minute Success, but it created a challenge for focusing on lead generation, business development, and prospecting. And that book's available in audio and print. There will be other books coming out on each one of the 5-Minute Success Principles. And so that's part of my future plans.
Great. So basically, if anyone is interested in joining the 80 by 80 movement, they'd go to 80by80movement.com. I will also put the links in the show notes, but it literally is the number 80 with an X, 80, the number, movement.com, and you register for free. All of it's free?
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Just want to encourage everybody to become part of the community and to share your challenges for life.
So coming back to the whole idea of work-life balance, because so far I'm hearing that you're very driven, you're very dedicated, you take time to learn and to grow. And so nothing really, it sounds like you don't have a lot of resistance to anything, which is actually quite normally Taurus in some ways. So if you had to say there was one part where you would like to focus more, like I'm guessing with the biking with your husband, you do take trips and you do vacation and you have fun and you have downtime. Like, do you have nothingness time? Do you meditate? What are some of the health practices that you do to balance out the workload that you have?
In the process of setting up the habit of the morning routine of writing, I was introduced to Hal Elrod and the Miracle Morning and became part of the Miracle Morning community and have continued that. So the Miracle Morning is based on the acronym SAVERS, makes it easy for remembering. They stand for S stands for silence or meditation. A is for affirmations. V is for visualization. E is for exercise. R is for reading. And the final S is for subscribing or journaling. And so that's part of every morning. And just one note on the scribing, on the journaling, Hal Elrod put me onto this 5-minute journal. Now, I wish I could say I invented the 5-minute journal, but I am not the inventor of 5-minute journal. But you can still use it. It's a great app. They have the written version as well. But the app I find to be really great format or platform, because the way it's set up, every day when you open up your morning with journaling, the first thing you do is pull up the app, and that has these questions of I'm grateful for, and then you have 3 points, and then what I will do to make today great. There's 3 points. And then an daily affirmation. And then at the end of the day, a reflection time of 3 amazing things that happened today. And then how could I have made today even better? So a moment to reflect. And then it has a way to upload a photo. So this is one of the main reasons why I love this platform, because I can scroll through this and I can see several years worth of photos of every day. I selected a photo of a memory of that day. And that's just been really powerful for me in terms of habits, setting up good habits. And so you mentioned vacations, and I'm 60 now, and my husband did have a health event actually on my 60th birthday in 2019. He was in the hospital with a cardiac event. And it made me realize that when I look back on the times, the memories I have are not really of the real estate deals. I do remember the people. I remember their stories and helping them, but I don't really remember the real estate deals, but I really do remember things that happened in my life with my husband and my children and people that I'm close to. So I had already begun really being intentional and purposeful about scheduling travel for our family, my husband separately, and each one of our children who are adult children but not married. And people kept saying, Karen, you just go all these places. And I was like, well, first of all, I'm kind of catching up because I didn't go anywhere for a long time. Second of all, I want to do it now because you never know when things might change. And I can do it now. I've got the wealth to do it now. I've got the health to do it now. And I don't know when that's going to change. And I look back and I'm going, oh my gosh. I mean, I don't really consider myself a prophetic person, but it really is true. The only time you really have is now. And yes, I'm going to create the life of my dreams going forward. At the same time, start today, do it now is something that I have really learned to embrace.
Great words of wisdom. And obviously, I would agree that it's an important thing to embrace what you have right now, but it's a really good balance that you have going on. So everyone check out the 5-Minute Success podcast, as well as the 80 by 80 movement. That's 80by80movement.com. Register yourself. Now, is it only for people? Is it every age?
Well, yes. Well, so if you're 80, that may be challenging for you. So you could go back and register ones you've done. But other than that, everybody else should be able to register and have a lot of fun with it. So I've had some people say, oh my gosh, I should go back and count all these things I've done. And I'm like, yes, you should. You should, maybe this is an opportunity to reflect on all the things you have done and all the accomplishments you've had. And if that's where you are, then that's your place too. But it also should, for most people, help you look forward to what you want to do, because that anticipation plus the fitness activities to prepare yourself to do the things are also, in many cases, more motivating when you're looking forward to doing something that is a challenge.
Absolutely. And of course, creating a community helps that momentum and the acknowledgement and the celebration of all these successes that lead to our experience and our betterment and our empowerment in all ways. So thank you, Karen. This is amazing and exciting. And I hope everybody checks out 80 by 80 Movement and of course, the 5-Minute Success podcast and her book, because even though you may not be in real estate, it all sales in all ways, as you had mentioned. Lead generation is across the board. So if you're a health professional, it's still very valuable. I would recommend get it. All the links will be in the show notes. Thank you, Karen, for being here today.
Oh, this is awesome. I'm so delighted, JJ, to share with your community.